morning, and
I like it. I mean, it's beautiful.
And what about, did I hear harp or heart?
Huh?
Did you say heart or harp?
Heart.
Either one? What'd you say you got up with?
with it on my heart.
Oh, that's the word I was listening to.
Yeah.
When you lose hearing, you lose letters, so sometimes harp and heart sounds alike.
No, it's I got up thinking about how we're unsure about what's gonna happen tomorrow. And that song come to my heart.
What's tomorrow?
I don't know about tomorrow.
Oh, I see.
And I started singing it at 5:30 this morning, and I was like, okay.
I know what's gonna happen tomorrow. Linda's gonna be turned into a pincushion tomorrow.
Oh.
Taking her down to acupuncture.
Wait.
Oh.
So we
Probably
would
have to take her to
just go ahead and start Sunday school.
Or did she go to get
Yeah, 10:45.
Yeah, we're gonna start Sunday school, guys.
Similar
It's
acupuncture.
10:30. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and pray for Sunday school and for church today, and we're going to get started on the lesson. Lord, thanks for this opportunity, Lord, to come to your house this morning, Lord, lay your word, Lord, help us to get the Genesis, help us to help us solidify our stance and know how to study your word, Lord, and how to have the right kind of worldview, Lord. And thank you for patient argument for us. We still pray. Amen. We've been in Genesis chapter 1. We've started Genesis because, of course, I mean, of all the books in the Bible, Genesis is that foundational book. It really is. If you don't have Genesis down, your rest of your understanding of the Bible is kind of it's always off kilter. You don't know if somebody's more liberal in the Bible or conservative in the Bible. Just ask what their stance on Genesis. You don't have to sit there and go through all the other things, because Genesis ultimately, since the Bible is progressive revelation, if it's off, everything else seems to go through, and it's like dominoes. One hits the other, and it dominoes throughout the rest of the whole book of the Bible, the whole Bible, and it throws your whole view out of whack.
Well, it's interesting. We heard
That's actually
the Pastor Andrews thing on angels yesterday, and somebody asked him, when were the angels created? And he said, I really don't know whether they were created before man was created or afterwards. So I don't know. Does it really say when angels were created?
It doesn't really focus on that. We know that God created them.
Yeah.
But, I mean, he could have created them before he created everything else. It doesn't talk about that. Because Genesis really just, the whole point of it starts off really big. You know that God created heavens and the earth, so he created everything.
Yeah.
But then he starts talking about the creation of the earth, and he starts talking about specifically the creation of man, chapter 2, and then it works its way down until you get to Abraham, and it's really trying to get to there, so we can talk about his grand plan and how he's going to bring the Messiah in, and how he's going to use Jesus to bring salvation to the world, and eventually bring his people back to him and all that stuff.
Somebody asked what they were made of, and he tried to explain that. He said they're not like us. They can do anything they pretty well please.
They're a completely different type of creation. That's what they are. But they do very much resemble kind of like us, because God created them, and of course we have some concrete. He's going to create some things with similar features. They don't necessarily always have to look like us. Like, remember seraphim? Remember from that's in Ezekiel and in Revelation. They had 4 different types of heads. You had the head of a lion, the head of an ox, the head of a man, and the head of an eagle. So, and I always wonder, is there one of each, or does it depend on how you look at it? You look at it certain ways. Maybe they resemble certain things. You can look at it in certain directions.
Well, yeah.
Because usually when we see him in the Bible, you see him as looking like, oh, that looks like a human. But then there's times when they can look like something else. So, like, the seraphim have different appearances depending on the angle you look at it, where you look at it. They call them. I mean, Revelation calls it beast, which is definitely not human-like in that sense. They have wings, but some of the other angels don't have wings. Like the ones that met the ladies at the garden tomb. I mean, they look like human beings. Just sitting there, telling them, hey, he's not here. He's risen. And amen, right? So,
well, it says you may be entertaining angels you don't even know it.
Yeah, I really think you do. I think there's a lady I met once. I was struggling at school, and it was near city school, and she came and she was subbing for my care position. I couldn't find anybody, and she was wonderful. And I love working. And she every day. I mean, I saw how she kids, and she was a very good Christian lady. I don't know. She just had a good heart.
Yeah.
But then I was like, what if she's an angel? I just don't realize it. Because she came exactly the time I was praying. I needed somebody, and she's the one that God provided. So it's like maybe he just probably the right person at the right time, or whatever, you know.
Well, that pastor, the pastor was.
But I really appreciated her being there, because I was like, you know, it gave me a new heart, a good heart. It helped encourage me, you know. So I don't know. Maybe that's what God had to do. You know, you never know.
You know, that pastor of mine that had stage 4 cancer, he had a heavenly visitor. I think it was 3 times.
Yeah.
And my first wife.
That one
my
person
second
comes
wife, I
in,
guess,
it just says the right thing at the right moment. You're like, I need to hear that. You know, because for whatever reason you get discouraged, and you know. So sometimes God can use people. Sometimes, so He can send them out like angels, because that's what He wants to do. It depends on. It's all up to Him. You know, how He chooses to do that. But I'm glad He does stuff like that. We appreciate it. So I know He cares about things that bother us and things that trouble us. You know.
I mean, they're up to, but it was interesting. Then somebody asked
Yeah.
me, were
Genesis 1
they
just
all
talk
males?
about
And he
the
said there was
angels
one that,
specifically.
and I didn't catch the reference. There was one that was mentioned as a female.
Yeah.
I forgot what scripture.
Now, in Genesis 1, between verses 1 and 2, that was originally the reason for the gap theory. If you look at the founder of the Church of Scotland, he originally wanted to use the gap theory to explain angels by sticking the fall of Satan and everything between Genesis 1:1 and Genesis 1:2. It's like, oh, Genesis 1, he creates everything. But then they talk about, but there was there's kingdom on earth that was made of angels, and then all this stuff, and then Satan rebelled, and so God had to send another primordial flood to destroy the world and all that stuff. But there's an issue with that, because now you're putting sin and destruction and death all before the fall of man. That's what here on earth, but when man was placed in the garden, he was still good. This world had been corrupted. So you can't stick stuff between 1 and 1 and 1:2 on planet Earth, you know.
Yeah.
The rebellion has to be in heaven. It has to be, you know, and it has to be whatever, because heaven just live in our same time frame, doesn't it? It's outside of our time. So where does that fit? I'm not exactly sure. We know it fits because it's in Ezekiel.
Well, that was one of the questions he had.
But it doesn't. But the Bible doesn't specify a specific time, because it doesn't put it in Genesis anywhere. It doesn't reference it. People should try to stick it in there.
Honestly, interesting. One of the questions you asked was about that time zone, whether the angels had sex with whatever was on the earth. And he said no, they're sexless.
Nephilims,
No.
There's giants in the world because the world before the flood had a lot more like nutrients. It was a lot more vibrant. There's a lot more oxygen in the atmosphere, so things got to very large sizes. I mean, you can see it from the fossil record. There was large, there was larger people. I mean, there was larger plant life. There was larger bugs. There was larger animals. Everything was larger. I mean, and things lived longer. So of course, like for a reptiles, they just get bigger and bigger and bigger. They'll never stop growing. So what happens if they live a long life? They'll get to be a huge animal, a dinosaur. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but after the flood, all the nutrients, the atmosphere. Well, after the flood, the atmosphere changed. The structure of the earth changed. I mean, we got plate tectonics now because of the flood that caused the earth's crust to crack. I mean, it changed the whole gambit of everything. So we don't have as much oxygen in the atmosphere, so things can get as big. But that's one of the issues with gigantism and all that stuff. So yeah, that's what you're gonna get the Nephilim from. They're not special creatures and things. People try to put that in there because they want to bring in the Book of Enoch. The Book of Enoch is not. It's one of those books that it doesn't hold any salt. Okay, I can't go into the whole rigmarole here because I want to get back to Genesis. And we start in Genesis 1:20. And we were on day 4. We're finishing day 4 in the evening and morning with the fourth day. In fact, it says that it never shows that that's a given time that God created. He kept a certain time frame for each of the days of creation. And in verse 20, it says, "And God said, let the waters bring forth abundant, the moving creatures that have life, and the fowl that they may fly above the earth, and the open firmament of heaven." And God created great wells and every living creature that moved, in which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every fleeing fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good. Right? It's always good. It's not corrupted yet. Right? There's not been any other evil. There hasn't been. That's why you can't stick stuff between just 1 and 1, 2. Because everything Tom says something, it says it's good. It's good. It's good. God created it a good and perfect world. Right? And God blessed them and said, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the waters with the seas, and let the fowl multiply the earth, and let the evening and morning for the 5th day." Okay? So God had to create. God created all these environments, and then He filled them with life. That's what, right? It shows that God created the. We like to think from an evolutionary standpoint. People want to think, "Oh, what came first, chicken or the egg?" Right? What came first? The environment, the creatures. That's the environment created for the creatures. Well, from our Bible, it shows us that God created the environment first, then put the creatures in it. It's completely different, all right? Instead of the creatures adapting to the environment. Okay, and we see that He started off with the fowl and fish. Well, that doesn't fit evolutionary standpoint. That's why you can't mix them together, right? According to evolution, fish became for birds, but at this time it came the same day, right? So this can't be millions of years. You can't give them those day timelines, big long eons, right? You can't mix up the times. It has to be a little 24-hour day because He's putting these things at the same time. All right. And God said, "Let the earth bring forth living creatures after His kind." So this is now the walking creatures, right? Cattle and creeping things and the beasts of the earth after His kind. And it was so. God made the beasts of the earth after His kind, and the cattle after their kind, everything that creeps on the earth after His kind. And God saw that it was good. Again, it was good. It's how God intended it. And God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness." Okay? And let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and the fowl of the air, and of the cattle, and of all the earth, and of every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. So God created a man in His own image. And in the image of God created He him, male and female, created He them. I mean, I wish we. This is a real big thing. I wish we could get down pat, just down pat, right? Because this is something that's really heavily attacked nowadays, isn't it? I mean, it's a heavily attacked thing because we want to re-identify everything. We want to make man an animal. Well, man has dominion of animals. Man's not an animal. If you treat man like an animal, then what is man going to do? He's going to act like an animal. Well, what did they do? They act like creatures and animals. But no, they're created in the image of God. If they're created in the image of God, that explains why you can't murder somebody, right? Because you just create somebody, kill somebody else who's made in the image of God, right? God made us higher than animals, right? He expects more of us. He gave us more responsibility. He gave us a mandate, right? And we have to, and that's something that all of us were given. And then and nothing negated that mandate after the fall of man. We still have that mandate, that we're still responsible over God's creation, right? He made us to be responsible for that creation. And what did Satan do? He got Eve to just do one little doubt, and he's still making us doubt. He's still making us doubt. He's still making us doubt how He created us. He's still making us doubt how we identify ourselves. He's still making us doubt our place in this world. And that's why man's confused. That's why man's gone off the deep end. Real bad. And God blessed them, and He said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth." That has always been our mandate, right? That was man's first mandate. Okay? And so we're supposed to have dominion over the earth. And God said, "Behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree, and which the fruit of a tree yielding seed, to it shall be for meat." So give all the food they would ever need, right? To every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the air, and to every creeping thing that walks upon where there is life, I've given every herb, a green herb, for meat. And it was so. And God saw everything that He made. Behold, it was very good. And the morning, and the evening, and the morning were the 6th day. So there you go. You got the creation of man being on the 6th day. and you're seeing man being the pinnacle of God's creation, right? Not just an evolved being. So we can't be theistic evolutionists and try to mix them together. They don't work, right? God made us with a purpose, right? And without the purpose, what does man do? He wonders. Man gets into mischief. Man destroys things. Man, gets lost. He doesn't know what to do. So we have to remember God created us for a purpose, and that's important to know. So when you get to Genesis 2, there's kind of like a superimposed, like, okay, we've got this overview. We've shown everything from the beginning of the earth now to the creation of man, but now it's like there's another creation story within the creation story. And I think it's interesting because people who want to try to take Genesis and they take the first 15 chapters of Genesis and they try to make it more, I guess, they try to metaphorize it, make it more metaphorical. This represents this, represents that. A lot of them get stuck between Genesis 1 and 2. And in fact, I remember I was studying and I found some stuff of all people, from the church fathers and things. And I was looking through stuff because I was trying to talk about how our interpretations have changed over the years, interpretations over the centuries. You have to start off, of course, all the way at the beginning. You have to talk about Nehemiah, but then you have to bring it all the way to the present day. And there's a lot of history to cover. And after the first century, after the first century, there became a lot of debate between different things. There was 3 schools of thought. There was Tertullian. He was very, very realistic. You had the school in Syria, Antioch, which is where Texas Receptus from. That's where our King James Bible is based on. And you had the school that was in Alexandria. It was headed by Clement and later by Origen, if you know who Origen is. And he was very metaphorical and allegorical in his interpretation of the Bible. Okay, so you have literal, you have historical grammatical, you have stuff that's very allegorical. So you got 3 schools of thought. And of course, we follow the one that's historical grammatical, right? The one that's more plain than reading. The Bible means exactly what it says it means, within its historical context. All right. Well, one of the people came from the schools of thoughts by Origen. A lot of them did. That's where you get a lot of the things from the Catholic Church. It's based on Alexandria, the Alexandrian school of thought, right? So that's why if you look at Catholic theology. It's like they'll tell you, well, there's no rapture. They'll tell you, well, there's none of this, or Jesus already returned, and the church is reigning in his stead, and there's already been 1,000 years, and we're already in eternity. And you're like, wait, what? Because they take this very allegorical. They very loosely handle things. All right. A part of it came from a guy named Augustine. They call him Saint Augustine, but his name's Augustine. He was about the 4th century AD, and he wrote a lot of things, including a book called The City of God. That's probably the one thing that he was supposed to probably less known for. But he tried to write a commentary on Genesis, and he's very allegorical because he follows that school of thought. And he got through the first chapter and got to the end, and then he stopped. He never finished it because he had a hard time. He's like, "What did I do at chapter 2?" Because he's in there trying this. Oh, this just means this. Oh, this just means that. Or this just means this. Because he's trying to make it match his idea of what science was in his day. And it's really kind of funny to watch. When you're reading this, you're like, okay, they had some weird ideas of what science was in the 4th century. Because we've come a long ways, in some of our understandings. But even in his day, people were trying to make science match with Bible. He was trying to fuse them together to make it more, I guess, palatable. Because he lived in a day where the Roman Empire was on a great decline, and he lived to see the western part of the western part of the Roman Empire fall. Okay, and he was part of the eastern part of the Roman Empire, but that eventually became the Byzantine Empire. Okay, it continued on, and so for him, yeah, he got to chapter 2 and he just gave up. He's like, what do I do? And I think I thought it was very interesting because a lot of people like to go back to church fathers. Oh, they knew best. They knew best. Did they? Some of them were kind of got a little confused in those first couple of centuries because they started following after all this allegorical stuff because of the Greeks. And then when they go back to try to apply it to books like Genesis, it didn't work because you have to look at Genesis from a historical dramatic viewpoint. So in chapter 2, you start getting another kind of creation account. It says, thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the hosts of them. And on the seventh day, God ended his work which he had made. It was on the seventh day. So there's your seventh day where he rested. And God blessed them and sanctified it because that it had rested from all his work which God had created. And these are the generations of heaven and earth when they were created. And the day that the Lord made the earth and the heavens. Every plant of the field before it was in the earth, and every herb, and God had not caused it to rain upon the earth, right? Why? Because the earth's atmosphere was different then, wasn't it? It held more moisture. So it didn't need to rain because the viewpoint never got low enough to make it rain, right? And there was not a man to till the ground, right? But there was a mist that came from the earth. That's what it's talking about, the water and the whole face of the ground. And the Lord formed man out of the dust of the earth. Well, wait, it just talked about man being formed on day 6. See how that can be confusing to some people? You just talked about man being formed on day 6, and now you talk about day 7, and now it's going back. But it's like you take a little breath, and now we're talking about how God specifically made man, right? It's like it takes a back step, right? And Lord formed man out of the dust of the ground and breathed into the nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. Before it just says that God on the 6th day God created male and female, right? But now it's saying that God created them out of the dust of the field. So some people are like, okay, well, is man a 6th-day creation or a 7th-day creation, right? Well, the first chapter it tells us it was a 6th-day creation. So this is going. So like I said, it's like a backtrack. It's going back and specifically now talking about. It's like zeroing in on just man's creation, right? Because that was the whole point. He was trying to get to man, right? Where did you come from? What are your origins? It didn't talk about every little detail. It didn't talk about specifically how he might have made every little creature. It said he did. But now it's talking about man specifically because he wants to deal with man. Right? He's the one. We're the ones that he gave the mandate to. And the Lord God formed man out of the dust of the ground, breathed into the nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. That shows us that life originally came from God. Life still comes from God, right? And the Lord our God planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he put the man whom he had formed. Okay? Notice that God provided everything man needed, right? If you look at evolutionary standpoint, man started off as nothing, and he worked his way up, and things are constantly going to utopia, right? That's what they're trying to force you to think. But it shows here, when God created Eden, he created a garden. Guess what? He started off at the pinnacle. He started off with everything he needed. He started off with no disease. He started off with no famine. He started off with everything he needed. Man didn't have to sit there and work. He had everything he needed at his disposal. And God provided it, right? It's man who destroyed all that. And we're sitting there going, oh, we got to have Eden. We got to have Eden without God. There is no Eden without God, right? You can't look at the world from an evolutionary viewpoint and think, oh, we're progressing towards something better when we start at something better and it's progressing downhill, right? And he put it, and out of the ground made the Lord God grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food. So within Eden itself, God made some more special creations specifically for that garden, right? Because he made Eden a place where man had everything he needed. He was supplying it all, right? And the tree of life also in the midst of the garden, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, right? So he gave man everything he could possibly need in this garden. And the river went out of Eden to the water of the garden, and from thence it was parted and became the 4 heads. I think it's interesting because when you look at the New Jerusalem in Revelation, and you look at the description of Eden, how similar they are. There's a river in the Garden of Eden. Guess what? And in Jerusalem, whenever you had the eternity, right? Guess what? In the city that's built 4 square, that New Jerusalem, there's a river, there's a tree, right? The tree of life comes back. All that's restored. And so that's why you kind of need to understand your Genesis, because your Genesis ultimately helps you understand your Revelation. One comes before the other, right? And that's one of the things I love about it, is when you start seeing those similarities, those parallels, and those books you can parallel together. I guess we'll start with the names next week, because we don't need to go through all the names and stuff, because they do have different things they mean and different reasons for being. So I guess we'll stop there today. We'll start in chapter verse 11 next week. So, yeah. But, yeah.
How you doing, Jeff?
It starts with the garden. It ends with the garden. Essentially.
Just playhouse.
Yeah.
Well, you gotta understand.
Fucking right.
I told her, when we get there, we're going breakfast.
Ready to play it?
We're hoping that when we get Nana's age up there, it's, you know,
Everybody always comes back.
Nicole?
Shirley, I don't know if I want to be that person around her